Hello, everyone. This is the legendary Zoltan here with my co-host Mel. Say hi, Mel.
Hi, Mel.
Thanks. And we're here today to talk about something that I care about, at least, and that is what is the definition of an RPG, at least in the world of video games? What defines any game as an RPG or not an RPG? And the reason I wanted to have this discussion is because recently we had the Game Awards in America, and also there were the Australian Game Awards, which I didn't know that was a thing at first. And in the American Game Awards, which is the big one, of course, the RPG of the year, in which freaking Dragon Quest XI was a nominee for, the award went to Monster Hunter World. And then in the Australian one, the award went to freaking Detroit Become Human. So,
wow.
It's really interesting. In the case of the Australian one, it's completely community decided. Even the nominees, I think, are decided by the community, and then the community all votes. And so I heard about this information from a channel called JRPG, where the J is just the dude's name, Jay.
Oh, very clever.
Yeah, very clever. Yeah, and so he's an Australian dude, and so he talked about that, and that's where I got the information that it's all completely community run. Whereas the American one is not completely community run. It's only like 10% or something community input, and all the rest is just like industry people, I guess.
Yeah, who the hell knows who's picking that? Jeff Keighley and his friends.
And his friends, exactly. So, anyway, it kind of bothers me that a game that we both played and loved, Dragon Quest XI, sitting right there on the freaking top of the nominee list, and the award goes to Monster Hunter World. And so I looked into it. I'm pretty sure that game is not an RPG. You played it, right, Mel?
I did. I put, I don't know, generously about 15 hours or so into that game, but still I would count that as scratching the surface. It is close to being a role-playing game, in my opinion. I would probably not object to someone putting it on like a list of their favorite role-playing games, or like Monster Hunter, the series in general, because this Monster Hunter World is really not much different.
Yeah.
In terms of stacking it up against Dragon Quest XI, though, I don't think it stacks. I don't think it does. I think popularity-wise, it probably does, which I guess is sort of confounding. Like, what is the difference? Yeah. I think a lot of people were more interested in seeing a big open Monster Hunter, but I think that game didn't really execute as well as it could have compared to how well Dragon Quest XI definitely nailed being a new Dragon Quest with a shit ton of stuff to do and a pretty good story.
Big world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't really ask for more. If you hear somebody announce, I'm gonna make a new RPG with the old school fashion, just this is a classic JRPG but with top tier production values, you can't really expect anything better than what we got for Dragon Quest XI.
It's probably the purest JRPG. Like, if we're gonna rate them on terms of how much of an RPG these games are, like Dragon Quest XI obviously wins, like objectively, but if you're gonna, and I guess that's part of why we're doing this episode, if you're gonna like sort of have different criteria for what makes a role-playing game, and you're gonna include Monster Hunter, which, as I said, I'm okay with that being on that kind of a list. I don't know. I still think Monster Hunter World falls a little flat. I think there's a lot of meaningful criticism that still surrounds, after several updates, surrounds what that game is and the objective of that game with the world subtitle. But, if we want to get into our list, or you want me to drone on about Monster Hunter World?
Yeah, no, I guess we should get into the lists. I noticed you talked about how it's more Dragon Quest XI is more of an RPG than Monster Hunter, and so that refers to an idea I've heard other YouTubers talk about, that whether that game genre is like a spectrum, and so whether you're an RPG or not, it's not a clear-cut decided thing. You're on a spectrum of how much of an RPG you are. But I'm going to say right now, I think it can be done. Hopefully we can do it right now. That we can just have a clear-cut definition. This is and this is not, even if it's close. This is an RPG and this is not. I think it can be done. I don't feel like it needs to be a spectrum. I think it can be a thing or not a thing with clear cutoff points.
All right.
But, yeah, let's get into our list. I'm sorry?
I said, okay, yes.
Yes, okay. So, me and Mel have each come up with 5. I came up with 4, and he came up with 5 criteria of what defines an RPG, a role-playing video game, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and some of them are sort of similar, but they're all different enough that I decided not to combine any of them. So we're just going to do all of them. So, Mel's first criteria. You go ahead first and tell me your first criteria.
Yeah, and these are things that I think must be present in order for you to call them a role-playing game at all. And I think these things, I guess they don't all have to be present. But
what? It's not a criterion if it doesn't have to be present.
Well, all right, fine. Let's go through my list and let's alternate.
We'll decide, yeah.
An RPG must include visible stat numbers, and by that I don't necessarily mean stat numbers that like pop up over your head when someone whacks you with a stick or anything like that. I mean, at least somewhere in a menu somewhere you can see your HP total, your MP total, like strength stats, visible stats that represent the numbers going on under the hood, as opposed to a game that I'm going to defer back to, which is decidedly not a role-playing game, which would be God of War. No stat numbers are surfaced to the player. Of course they exist because it's all numbers, right?
Yes, of course.
But your character is not growing in a numbers-based, visible way that the player is meant to look at and intentionally scrutinize. So I think that is criteria number 1.
Okay. So I hadn't actually thought about the idea that it should be visible. And so I'm going to challenge it by asking you, so what if, I don't know what the... Can you level up in God of War, or do you just like get new weapons and stuff?
You just get new stuff.
Okay.
And you get new, like... attack abilities.
Okay, so let's use... Do we both agree that Dark Souls games are RPGs? I say yes. Do you say yes?
I say yes.
Okay,
yeah.
So if we both agree. So what if, for example, you couldn't see any of the numbers except for the level number? What if you just had you leveled up? You're stronger now. And you are stronger in exactly the same way. You just can't see it. Does that eliminate the RPG status?
I mean, it would fundamentally change the way that game works because you choose where your stat points go. It doesn't just level up and show you the number. You choose where those and that's the point of showing you the number in that game.
Okay.
And I'm sure there are examples of games where they show you the number but you have no control over it. I don't know.
What if you just can't see the number is what I want to ask. What if Dragon Warrior 1, you couldn't see the numbers?
Ever, like any number at all? It's just like what, a health bar and a mana bar and no other numbers.
I guess that's what I'm asking. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
That would be weird. I'm trying to imagine it.
Would be weird. I feel like that would. I mean,
I'm gonna say that I'm imagining it right now. So you fight all the slimes, and and you get a number of experience points. You definitely get.
It's just hit.
And it tells you.
Oh.
It tells you the experience points. But then you finally hit the level up. You leveled up. Your strength and your vitality have gone up, but you can't see it anywhere in the menu.
I feel like that would. I guess that does work. I guess they don't have to be invisible, or visible rather, but that would be bad. Like I feel like that's defeating the point. They may as well be visible. Like I guess that's a bending of that first criteria, but. It doesn't serve anything unless, as a game designer, you think numbers are intimidating your player base. Like to some degree, I think they hid a lot of the stats in like Super Mario RPG, but they showed some of them.
They do show some of them. Yeah.
They didn't show all of them for sure, but they did show enough to where you're like, I see this and this. Like, I can tell Peach is not good at this or is good at that, and Bowser, and et cetera, et cetera. It enables you to make those decisions because your characters are, well, we'll get into the rest of the number of stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, for now,
But I think that's pretty key, is to be able to see your character's exact potency in different categories.
okay. That's a really good point. That's a good point. Yeah, and definitely, why would you do that for sure, right?
Yeah,
Why
I
would you?
suppose you could do it, and the game would be pretty similar. It would just be worse
Yeah.
in like a pretty meaningful, but I guess a mechanically not too different way.
You're
for some
leaving me.
games.
You're leaving me in a predicament, Mel. Like,
Am I?
yeah, because like, am I supposed to say, okay, yeah, you're right, I agree, you must have visible stat numbers, or should I say, no, it's okay if you can't see them as long as they exist?
I mean, if they don't exist, you're removing certain agency from the player and certain decision making that they could make, unless you have another vague way of communicating, like your strength is plus and your other character's strength is plus plus. You know,
It's the
like
same
then
thing.
at that point you may as well say 1 and 2.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point right there. I don't know. They
I think
could.
it's pretty necessary.
Okay. I'm going to concede that this is a requirement for RPGs. If you can't
This is
see
the
them,
part where Mel didn't realize this was a debate. I thought we were just sharing what we both believed was.
yeah. Well, you should be happy if I declare it's a debate because I'm not good at debating. But
Okay.
I don't know. Just my hope is that we can decide the rules. So I'm going to go
Sure.
ahead and concede, I guess, just agree that your number one is a requirement to be an
Okay.
RPG. I'm going to say that. I'm going to rate that. Okay. All right. Let's go to my one now.
Gotcha.
Okay, a very simple one. You must be a character. You can't be just like a piece of geometry or like in all honesty, I'm trying to think of what games that are anything similar to RPGs do that wouldn't match this. It's always a character.
I would agree.
When is it not a character? In Tetris, like that's about it.
Right. No, you're right. Or if you're a group of people and I'm trying to think like you're controlling a horde of people and you're not any one of them, like a god game.
Yeah,
you know
like
what I mean?
you're controlling like an army, like in
Yeah.
StarCraft or something.
Those are strategy games, but you're not those guys. You're not one
Yeah.
of those guys. You're not even a guy. You're the war effort.
Yeah, you don't play as a single one of them. Well, I don't
You're
know.
not playing a role,
Yeah. Well,
right?
I don't think it's that you have to be one of them. Like, for example, if you played a game where you control the whole army, if they all had names and they all... No. You're making a point. Yeah, there should be one of them.
One of them should be an avatar for you, the person with the controller or keyboard and mouse, to at least on some level put into their
some
shoes.
level.
On some, like, because it's going to be different for every game. Some games allow you to, voice the character more or less, choose their actions more or less. But there definitely can't be a game like a puzzle game like Tetris. To your example, it has to be a character.
Yeah.
I think that is a pretty fundamental. It may seem really like no duh,
Yeah.
but it definitely counts. It's
Yeah.
a good point.
Indeed. Yeah. No, I think you are right. So far, everything you say is right.
I'm the best.
You are the best. Okay, that's really nothing else we got to say about my one. I mean, what game has ever come out that is similar to an RPG where people said, oh, half the people said, oh, it's an RPG, and half of them said, no, it isn't, because that's not a character. That's like never happened, right?
Not that I recall.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to your second one?
My second one is you must include character growth outside of player skill.
Okay.
So your character has to get meaningfully more powerful, not because you mechanically got better at pushing not
buttons.
just
Yeah.
because you mechanically got better at executing on things. So this is where
Levels.
a game like Dark Souls kind of rides the line a bit, where you definitely get better at the game because you're better at playing with the mechanics in the game. However, you could, given enough time, not really improve mechanically, but each swing will still hit harder.
Yes, when you level up. Yeah, so
when you level up, put points into the whatever category it is. I think that is I think that not only is that a key element, a criteria of a role-playing game, role-playing video game, but I think that's one of the founding ideas that got it so popular.
I think we kind of discussed that. Yeah, it's the founding idea, at least for console RPGs, like with freaking... I mean, even if you just want to, like... Well, yeah, console RPG, the first console RPG is freaking Dragon Warrior, I'm going to just say. I'm going to decide that that's it.
Okay.
And the whole point of the game is just the grind. So yeah, definitely. So you're saying right here now that basically you got to have something akin to levels and level ups and experience points. Which here we go, Mel. It's time to make a big important announcement. Zelda is not an RPG. Boom.
Oh boy.
Did you always think that it was, or no, until now? What was your opinion until
now? It always struck me as like a weird sideways inclusion, like, I guess, but it never really felt like I'm playing an RPG right now when I played like Ocarina of Time or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that name got kind of stapled to it in Zelda 2 because you have levels and you can put points into things in that one. And then from there on, I think it kind of got like that label sort of stuck with it in a weird way. I can't imagine another reason.
No, I can imagine the reason.
What?
I think it's just that it's so similar in so many other ways that it just doesn't have levels. That's like the only thing it's missing. And particularly, it has story, right? It has story. Sure. It has like the world you traverse and all that. I think a lot of people think RPGs, they don't think first about grinding and levels. They think firstly about there's a story and you play a role in the story. I think that's why. That's what I think.
I think you may be right because he's a silent protagonist. It definitely meets some of the criteria that we mentioned and will mention. But to your point at the beginning, it's not going to meet all of them. And I think it's not going to meet a crucial few, even if we were to agree that it doesn't have to meet all of them. I think it doesn't meet enough critical ones to where it's really not a role-playing game. You're not in the traditional sense. Like, you can argue that you're playing the role of Link, and I would agree. I think Link is supposed to be you. Link is supposed to be you. You are Link. Link doesn't say things because Nintendo wants you to pretend you're Link.
Yes.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And you name Link whatever you want, again, because on paper, you put your name in that slot or a name that you identify with, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I'm right there with you.
It's definitely got elements. And that's, I think, something I'm a little surprised we didn't mention until now is the very famous, like, lazy review phrase, it has RPG elements.
Oh, God. Then it's not an RPG if it's something else with RPG elements. I heard, I've never checked myself, but I've heard that Call of Duty has leveling up. So,
yeah, it does, and it's had that for a while.
Okay, so that is a shooting game with RPG elements, not an RPG.
A shit ton of things, right. A shit ton of things have RPG elements because RPG elements are addicting.
Or a what thing? Why. A good thing, yes.
No, they're addicting.
Addicting, I'm sorry, yes.
Yes. They are also a good thing, in my opinion. But
they are
addictive in a big way because you get that number, it goes up. Ooh, fun.
Can I make it go up
and that's
a little
what a lot
more?
of them. Yeah, exactly.
Indeed. Okay, so your point now that there does have to be like something akin to levels and experience points goes perfectly into my next point, which is the way to train the character has to be grindable. It has to be able to be repeated over and over again at will somewhere. So what games does this like eliminate? Like, for example, there are games where you do the story quests. I can't remember which game it was. It's a recent game that is like this, where you do quests for the story, and after you finish the quest, you get the experience points. But so I guess if there are lots of extra quests, you don't have to do that. That's how you would grind, and if that's the case, then maybe that would still count. But the point is, it shouldn't be just a set, perfectly controlled amount. Like, you should be able to. The word train is the word I want to use. You should be able to train the characters, because the whole point of it is that those RPGs are trying to simulate the whole idea of practicing your sword play and getting better at it, or practicing killing monsters, and through the experience, as denoted by the term experience points, you get better at it. And so I say it has to be grindable and repeatable. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I absolutely agree.
Okay.
I think that is a pretty core element because role-playing games, I think a lot of what identifies them apart from action games is that the stats are doing, like, you're concerned with things other than the mechanics of stabbing a goblin. Your character is doing that for you. You're deciding which goblin to stab, the blue one or the red one.
Yeah.
And that's where the important gameplay is existing. And it's sort of implied, to your point, that as you gain experience, your character is getting better and better at stabbing goblins.
Exactly.
Maybe they're getting stronger too because they're training or whatever, but I also like to kind of envision it as like, he just knows how to do this better.
Exactly. Well, that's the word experience right there. You know, you hear a word enough times and you become desensitized to even its meaning. So,
oh yeah, EXP is not even, they don't even say experience anymore. It's just XP.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of people just call it XP. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Next, I believe, is your third point. Yes.
Okay. An RPG must allow you to change character equipment. I think this is pretty important because your character has to sort of like leveling up and gaining stats. I think part of what identifies a role-playing game is getting better, like the sort of
finding treasure.
Preparedness. Yeah, finding treasure, but also there's a level of preparedness and not inventory management, but like stocking up, survivalisms to a degree. Like, you need to get enough potions. You need to get the armor that's going to allow you to survive. You need to get the sword that does the thing, whatever it is. The accessory that blocks paralysis. I think those are pretty key elements. They don't have to be those things verbatim, but I think not having any kind of equipment change is sort of betraying kind of an original element to role-playing games. I don't know if you necessarily agree.
Well, when I read the thing, I wasn't sure if it was really a requirement to be an RPG, but I will agree that if you're going to have a character who's, going across the world on an epic quest, why wouldn't you have equipment, right? But so yeah, you're definitely leaving some fun on the table. But what
it might
if
just be a criteria of a fun game and not necessarily an RPG?
Yeah, so like, is there any game that gets eliminated? Is there any game where you level up but don't have equipment, and just because of that reason it gets eliminated from the list of RPGs? Like, none come to mind.
I mean, Zelda, you change equipment.
You change equipment, yeah.
Not a lot, but you definitely do.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you have items and things, and you do
like
shopping.
at least a couple sets of swords and shields.
I'm down to just say, yeah, gotta have equipment.
Yeah, I would say that of my items on my list, this might be almost too basic because it's like you need to do this to make a good game. Like
Exactly.
if your character's not going to change in any way, like you're going to have the same items or the items don't change, like I'm not sure
What
like
kind of game
what's
you're making?
changing. Yeah, what kind of game unless you're making like a platformer like Mario. Like Mario doesn't have permanent equipment changes
Hmm.
for the most part. And in almost any game he has temporary power-ups,
Yeah, the power-ups, yeah.
but he
Um,
doesn't and some of them he gets to hang on to until he uses them up
ah,
or gets hit and loses them. But I guess that might just fundamentally disqualify a game that otherwise wasn't a role-playing game.
must allow you to change character equipment. I mean, we are playing characters after all. What if? Well, okay, I'm gonna create an RPG right now. What if we have a world and the character is a soul, like a dead soul, and he doesn't even look like a human. He looks like a bunch of sparkling lights.
Sure.
He can't wear equipment. Is it an RPG anymore? Dude, that's how Criterion are weeded in and weeded out, yo.
I guess. No, you're right. So this ethereal character that cannot physically equip things is moving through this game and
Just levels up.
just levels up with I guess in that way you have sort of replaced equipment
With nothing.
or you maybe with nothing. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to have to replace it with anything. But I bet you $1,000,000,000 that if a JRPG came out where you play as a character that is like a sparkly soul and you run around, there's going to be some analogous things in that game to equipment. They're not going to let there's going to be accessories. You know there is. You're going to be able to equip like minor souls or something.
Okay.
But I think your point does, on a theoretical level, does stand because in that way you could present a role-playing scenario without equipment if there's a reason
Yeah.
good enough. I
It's
thought this was
unlikely,
maybe
of
my.
course.
It's unlikely, but at least on a theoretical level, and for all I know, there's a game that does this, where that wouldn't strictly disqualify it. So then, yeah, I think
Okay.
that's a good point.
Removed from the list. Boom.
Removed. Wow.
Okay. All right. So next is my third one. Yes. The game must contain a world, which means it must not contain levels. So, for example, if you've ever played a Castlevania game, have you ever played in Castlevania games other than Symphony of the Night? That is.
Yes,
Okay. Which one have you played before Symphony of the Night?
I have played all of the NES ones.
Did you play 4 for SNES?
Yes, and I was going to say and 4 for the SNES.
Okay, let's use that one as a good example. So in that game, you go, it's a level-based game. It's a stage-based game, I mean. And between each level, there's, even in the first, actually, I think the first Castlevania had it too. There's a map of the, here it comes, world. So there is a world, right? But
there is a world.
Yeah. But no, the point is, you can freely roam, or at least to some degree freely, roam the world and go back to previous areas if you're in the mood to do so. If you go into an area, I mean, some areas in every game are become inaccessible after you get past them. But there
Not in Castlevania 4.
You can't go back to previous areas in Castlevania 4.
Right.
Yes. So
were you saying that you could?
No. So I'm saying there are some RPGs, areas in RPGs where right after you finish that area, it becomes inaccessible and you can't go there again. But overall, the majority of the world should be traversable, and you can go to this place and that place the way you want to go. It can't be levels. It can't be level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. You beat the game. It's got to be you go to this area and then this area and then this area. And you can go back to them if you want, and you beat the game. What do you think?
I think that is maybe, I think like my number 3, I think I can envision a theoretical role-playing game where it's just that linear. where you really are just running left to right, and it's almost like. So I haven't played Valkyrie Profile, but that game has like a hub world and towns, right? Sort of, right? Yes, no.
It has a world that you fly around on, and you can go back to any of the previous areas anytime too.
So let's imagine in that game there is none of that. There's no that overworld or whatever. Okay. You are just running more or less left to right.
Okay. So you're going to say that I'm allowed to like run around in the area to grind, but once I leave the area, I can't come back to it, and I go to the next one.
I guess another example of this would be original Fire Emblem games. Have you played those? I
haven't played them, no. I mean, I know what they are, though.
Right. Those, I guess, are considered like SRPGs, like strategy role-playing games, where you do there is a character, you're the main character, you're the Lord, and all of the missions that you go on, which I guess are analog to levels, you can't go back to. And there's no overworld in most Fire Emblem games where you can just run around. And all of the shops that you encounter are on like a linear chain.
Holy crap.
After every mission, you go to a given town and you talk to the people like through menus. You don't walk around physically, and then there's a shop that you can visit in a menu. And when you're done shopping and when you're done doing whatever you got to do in that town, next mission starts, and whatever grinding you need to do has to be done in every mission, which is essentially a level.
Holy
crap! So I
crap.
think that might disqualify it.
Wait, that sucks. I don't like this, dude. Okay.
You might not like that type of role-playing game.
No, I do like that type of role-playing game overall, in general. I've never played one where you can't go back, because in Final Fantasy Tactics, there's a world map, and you can go back to previous places where battles were fought, and fight just random battles there.
We gotta hook you up with some of those old Fire Emblem games for our show.
They sound pretty hardcore.
They are. So yeah, I think that's an example of a very linear, like, it's to its design, it's intentionally that way, and they moved away from this design in newer Fire Emblem games.
Okay, I have a huge problem with this. Huge problem with this. The problem is, what am I going to do about Zone of the Enders? Zone of the Enders is a level-based action game. I mean, a stage-based action game. But you have freaking levels also, which are totally not important. So it's obviously just an action game. But I don't like the idea. I guess in that game... No, you get equipment. God damn it, dude.
Yeah, you do. Yeah,
you get equipment in Zone of the Enders. So what am I going to do? Is it a role-playing game?
But you can go back to areas in Zone of the Enders. Or am I totally imagining that?
Oh, my God, dude. In Zone of the Enders 1, you can. But in Zone of the Enders 2, you can't.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a straightforward, just on-rails action game. But it has the levels. And yeah. Crap. Is Zone of the Enders 1... Is Zone of the Enders 2? Is Zone of the Enders 2 an RPG, dude? You're blowing my mind right now.
So there are stats in that game? I haven't played those games myself, but I've seen a lot of the first one being played.
Yeah, so they're totally unimportant. But if you go into the menu, you will see that the mech that you pilot called Jehuti has a level. I think the max level is just 20. But it goes up the more stuff you kill. So if you want, you can hang out in a level and kill stuff over and over again. And I think you get a little bit more HP and a little bit more sub-weapon energy with every level. So you can use those weapons more and you can take a little bit more hits.
So I think, where are we on our list here? So we did your number 3, so we're going to do my number 4. I think my number 4 is going to throw a wrench into the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Please go to your number 4.
All right. Combat must be dictated primarily by statistical influence.
Oh, I love you, Mel. Thank you. Okay.
Which actually might be an argument to disqualify not only Zone of the Enders 1 and 2, but Dark Souls.
That's a problem, yeah. That one becomes difficult.
That might be. Although it could swing the other way if you grind hard enough, which kind of relies on your point number 1.
It's grindable, yeah. Yeah,
is it grindable?
Yeah, in the case of Zone of the Enders, even if you grind, it's not going to help you that much. It's totally pointless. I don't know why there are levels in Zone of the Enders 2.
Because role-playing games are popular in Japan.
No, but they're totally...
Honestly, I think that's why.
I guess that's the reason. It's
It's
not.
a popular mechanic.
It does not come out. It does not stand out at all. Like, you have to look in the menu. I have a level. I wonder what that's for. Like, that's basically all you think of it. Like, it's so irrelevant in at least number 2. I don't remember how important it was in 1, but in Zone Units 2, it means nothing, like, at all.
I think my point number 4 kind of sort of puts the nail in that one, where that game is primarily an action game, and you have to primarily be good at dodging incoming projectiles and dishing it back out, reflecting or whatever the hell it is, moving around. But in a game like Dark Souls, I think it only partially disqualifies it because you could grind to the point where combat has become primarily dictated by stats and not your own player skill. It's not enough for it to just include growth outside of player skill, but at least potentially it must be primarily dictated by your player stats. You could be a strategic genius, but if you never level up for normal players, there's always like a no level up speed run on YouTube of a lot of RPGs, right?
But let's go with like Dragon Warrior. No way, right?
You know what? I wouldn't count out that it's impossible, but is that the way it's meant to be played?
That's a good point.
There's always a level. There's a level 1 playthrough of Dark Souls where they don't level up at all.
Dude, the minimum level that you can beat Dragon Warrior 1 is like level 18. Like, it's impossible to be less than that and win.
Maybe it's old with those older games where the systems are simpler and it's strictly turn-based. Yeah. You're probably right.
In that game, it's totally
there's no way to like finagle your way out of getting hit or like choose the combat.
Exactly.
The way you can in Dark Souls. But I think it's fair enough to say that ideally, meaning the way that you're meant to play the fucking game, should be primarily dictated by stats. So you could be really good at like sort of parsing out the combat and knowing when to take turn, like especially if it's turn-based role-playing game. Those almost probably are all disqualified from being like a level 1 play through. Yeah. I would have to assume. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 out there. I'm sure there's some out there. But I would assume the vast majority of turn-based role-playing games require you to level up in order to not get just like smacked out of existence by later enemy things because it's turn-based. You can't not take the turn.
Totally, yeah. In the case of Dark Souls, I guess that point of where your skill becomes actually really important, I guess that's where you would just start the category of action RPG. That's a criterion of an action RPG is where you have to.
I would say so.
Also, just have the skill. So
the skill. So I guess we could get a little like lawyering with the wording here, and my point number 4 could be changed from combat must be dictated primarily by statistical influence to say combat can be dictated primarily by statistical influence. In the same way. So it must at least be possible for your stats to be the primary driving factor in combat.
Yes. We're in agreement on that. So once again, sorry, Zelda. Yeah. And this all totally disqualifies my the number 1 game I put on my freaking top RPGs list. Freaking Alundra. It's a Zelda clone. It's a Zelda clone.
Womp womp.
Yeah.
Womp womp.
Okay, let's go to my number 4.
Okay.
Kind of similar, just a little bit different, but I put it specifically in there to get rid of Zelda. I don't dislike Zelda. I just don't think it's an RPG. That's all.
That's fair.
Number 4, the ability to progress should be dependent on your parameters more than on tools. And by tools, I actually do mean just items, not like abilities or equipment so much. So in Zelda and in Symphony of the Night as well. And so I'm kind of eliminating Symphony of the Night here.
That's a good distinction.
Yeah. If you in both of those games, what's the only thing preventing you from going over there and over here and over there? Oh, I need the double jump item, or I need the raft or something like that. where I'm saying no. The thing that should be preventing you from getting in there is that the monsters are just too hard.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if I put that eliminates Symphony of the Night. What do you think? I'm ready to eliminate Symphony of the Night.
I'm totally fine if we're gonna get like very definitive, and of course, why else are we doing this episode?
Yeah.
If we're gonna be like super like strict about this, yeah, I'm totally fine saying that. Strictly speaking, Symphony of the Night is not a role playing game for among other things. The reason that you mentioned, for the same reason that you can discount like those are quote unquote Metroidvanias. For the same reason that Metroid is not a role playing game, even though you can be argued to be playing a role, but just like Zelda, it's not enough.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm happy to just set that issue aside. You know, everybody's like, Symphony of the Night, it's an RPG, right? And I'm like, well, is it an RPG? I mean,
it's got stats. There are numbers. It does check a lot of the boxes.
Nearly every box. Yeah.
Almost. Yeah. But I think there's something to be said for the character progression being more mechanical than stat-based. I think stat-based really is one of the key things that brings a role-playing game to the fore because I don't know. I think just strictly because you're supposed to be playing the game on a level other than the basic mechanics in a role-playing game. In a non-action role-playing game.
Yeah.
Where you're supposed to be making decisions that don't have to do with the basic swinging your sword. They have to do with when, where, and why, and then what are you going to do next. Sort of gamified combat in a weird way. I mean, a lot of combat is gamified now, but
yes.
It was an original way of gamifying combat because originally role-playing games, the pen and paper type, stemmed from gamifying military strategy. That's where all of this comes from.
Is that where it all comes from?
It comes from Central and Western European military strategies where they would assign number values to things like platoons and battalions and different equipment that a soldier might use to give themselves a sort of top-down bird's eye view in a way of, all right, if I have these supplies in real life for real warfare that we really are going to do, well, what are my odds? You know, it's a way of sort of laying that out in a way that you can sort of visualize and strategize. And it was originally a real tool that was used. And then over a lot of time, it got pulled down into sort of like war games and board games and tabletop games. And eventually, way down the line, it turned into things like we know today of pen and paper games, and then those got brought over to Japan, and Japan fucking loved it.
Yep.
And they're still on the role-playing game kick today.
Yep. That's really interesting information that I've never heard anywhere else. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so we're down to Mel's final criterion.
Number 5, right?
Yep,
okay, so my number 5 is player choice must actualize the character at least some of the time. So not necessarily all of the time. I think this is what makes it a role.
Indeed. You have some input into what happens.
You have some input. You have some agency as the player. I would even allow it to be simulated agency, where they're sort of playing to the fact that you are this character. So in that way, Zelda ticks this particular box, like big time. You are supposed to be like, when Link isn't saying something, it's because you are supposed to be saying something. You're supposed to kind of pretend that you're saying something. That's the whole point of a silent protagonist.
Okay, so what is I'm not really understanding. What is the minimum requirement to satisfy this, to actualize the character?
I don't know. I would say that the mechanic has to be present at all. And like either it's there or it's not. Either you're making decisions that the character has made, the player is making decisions for the character to say yes or no, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's that simple. And again, Zelda does that. At least Ocarina of Time and not Twilight Princess. Well, yes, that one too. But I was going to say Majora's Mask. Those games do have that false choice, that yes or no thing. And
Yeah.
Dragon Warrior did that originally.
Yeah. Dost thou love me? But thou must.
Right. But again, the point of that mechanic is to put you in that shoe. It's
Yes.
even though it's a false choice, it's to make you feel like you made that choice. Instead of showing you a cutscene, which is a thing that role-playing games would later heavily rely on, and they did to a degree back then too. It was to put you in those shoes. Western role-playing games do this a ton. They want you to make dialogue choices all day long.
Yeah.
Fallout does that up and down.
Yeah.
But I think this is a real key component. Outside of the stat numbers, maybe it's like the number 2 most important thing is that you have to be this character.
I feel like there's got to be tons of JRPGs that don't have this. Do they not? Take out all the yes/no choices in Final Fantasy and Dragon Warrior. Do they suddenly lose? Are they suddenly eliminated? You
know what? You're probably going to find a bunch of examples of other role-playing games where there's never an instance of
choosing
anything really.
It has to be outside of combat, right? Like you don't mean choose which goblin to hit first, right?
No, not just that. Right?
Yeah.
You know what? I think you might be right. Even though I feel like this is a pretty hallmark criteria of a role-playing game, I think that you probably will find games that I would call a role-playing game that don't have this. Now that you bring it to my attention.
I'm trying to think.
Like, I'm thinking, I don't know, but maybe. No, never mind. I was going to say, I don't know if the game that we're playing right now has this, but actually it does.
It does, okay. I'm trying to think of a bunch of games. So, like, Final Fantasy Tactics, there's, like, a place where you can go this way to the next mission or the other way. And, there's, like, different battles you fight depending on which way you choose. That counts, I think, right?
I think that does count.
Yeah. I mean, they talk about it in the story. You can go this way or you can go that way. You don't say which way you're going to go. You just you just go that way. But, so you have to choose that. Okay. Just think of a bunch of examples that, like, is there anything? What game does not have this? What game has none of that? Valkyrie Profile, you don't say yes or no too much, but
Xenosaga. Really? Do you really make a lot of choices, or are you just watching those characters do what they do?
You're just watching them do what they do for 2 hours at a time.
I don't. Yeah. I don't know that you're meant to inhabit the role of any of them. I think you're supposed to just kind of watch this anime.
Okay, how about this, dude? Dragon Warrior, of course, actually has the choice, but let's pretend it didn't have it. The whole point of this criterion is that it covers the whole purpose of playing the role, right?
Yes.
But I'm going to say, yeah, okay, it's nice to have player choice and all that, but I'm going to say that you being the dude, being Erdrick, going on the quest to find the princess and kill the Dragon Lord is the role you have played.
Sure. But in what way is that meaningfully different than me being the dude who is Kratos in God of War going to slay Zeus?
In terms of story, okay, that's a good point. It's not different at all. Yeah, it's not different at all.
I feel like that's the old well, you're always playing a role, and I always felt like that was in games, right? I always felt like that was defeated by games that
give you the choice.
Gave you the choice because it wanted you to fill the role, you the player. You're naming the character and you're making meaningful changes, in the story, or you're choosing to respond, or whatever it is. But you know what? I think there are I think there are mechanical um, elements of role-playing games that overshadow this, and maybe even push it out of being a necessary criteria.
Maybe we say that this is the point where we've stepped out of actual pen and paper role-playing games, and now we're in just the realm of role-playing video games. Doesn't require it. Maybe it doesn't require the player choice. I mean, yeah, if I think about Dragon Quest, whether you can say yes or no to stuff is kind of irrelevant, especially when you consider that they're going to make you do it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, well, my original point was that it's okay if it's simulated, if the choice is false. Right, because the goal is the same, to make you feel like you're doing it. But I think that not having these mechanics, like not having a silent protagonist, not having choices in dialogue or real like critical story related choices, I think is another automation of the role-playing game system, because originally among your choices were where all of your stat points would go. When you level up in a pen and paper RPG, it takes time.
Yeah,
like, you now have to sit down and get your eraser out and start doing some math.
Exactly. That's a good point. And so this is part of the whole streamlining process that Yuji Horii wanted to do, I guess.
I suppose.
When he made his whole point was...
think about it.
Yeah, he said, his whole point was he wanted to make these really complicated games accessible to even kids. And then he made Dragon Quest.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say we don't need that. Like, I'm thinking about this game I'm playing.
I guess not.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this game I'm playing right now. It's called, what's it called? It's called Omega Quintet. It's a pretty fun game. It's on PlayStation 4, and it's a compile heart game. And you play these girls who are like going out into like a ghoul infested on the brink of apocalypse Tokyo, and you go out there and you fight them, and you get level ups and you get items, and you come back to your like hub headquarters, and you like make some stuff, you make some equipment, and you go into your skill menu and level up some skills or learn new skills, and then you go out and do it again. It's like the most JRPG thing ever in the whole wide world. No choices, yo.
I guess not. Yeah, I the minute you brought it up, I was like, shit. I think there's probably a lot of games that don't fit this criteria that are decidedly role-playing games.
It definitely feels kind of weird to not have the whole role-playing point of the role-playing game in there. I mean, it seemed like that was the point, right? Was to pretend like you're the guy, pretend like you're the person in the situation. That's how like freaking a game that like did a really, really good job of just that whole role-playing aspect was freaking Oblivion and stuff, those Bethesda games.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a long time when I first played Oblivion to really see what like the appeal was, because I wasn't following the level up system. The stats, the stupid HP did not make any sense, because the amount of HP you get depended on this other stat, and they never told you that. But then, like, after like 6 whole hours of just like messing around, like, no, I'm gonna figure out why everybody loves this game. I had the moment. Basically, I just played enough quests that were really, really interesting. You go into the house. The lady's like, "Oh my God, my husband, he abused me or something. And now he's in jail." And I go to the jail, and he's like, "Dude, she accused me, but that's not true. I didn't do anything, and now I'm in jail." And then there's proof outside, it's buried or whatever, and you got to go get the item, and then you have to decide, okay, do I take it to him or do I take it to her? Who do I believe? And the quest outcome, changes depending on what you do. And I thought, and I realized, whoa, now we're freaking role-playing, yo. And so that was really cool. But, yeah, all those JRPGs, what are we going to do about them?
Man, I guess it really does get sort of defeated by that old argument. You're always playing a role. to some degree. Like,
Yeah.
you are moving Kratos around in God of War, right?
Yeah.
You're kind of, to some degree, meant to be him. It's definitely meant to be a power fantasy for the player.
You know,
Like,
now
we're 100% sure.
Now that you mentioned that, comparing that to pen and paper games, like really, that was another huge aspect to just where you're gonna go, where you're gonna slash your sword next. Like, is a huge big deal in pen and paper games where like you walk into a place, it could be totally safe. You know, I'm gonna move into that cave right over there. Okay.
Right.
Game Master, roll some dice. Oh, looks like you've come upon a layer of trolls. Now what do? You could choose to run. You could choose anything in those games. You could choose to run.
Of course.
You could choose to hit the guy closest to you. You could choose to throw some magic out there. What do you do? And just choosing one of those things is also part of the role playing. And so I guess you could say that, you know, just having the controller in your hand subverts all the saying that you're going to do this, and this by just pushing the button. You've decided that you're going to do it.
But also the list of verbs, so to say, is way smaller. You know, you can't just choose to run away all the time. You can't just choose to, like, you know, you have to play within a much tighter set of rules.
Indeed, yeah. The list of verbs, that's what you're saying. Yeah. All right. I say we go ahead and eliminate that number 5.
I think I agree. I think you convinced me. It is definitely in role-playing games, but it isn't in all of them.
Maybe. Yeah, not in every video game anyway.
Not in all role-playing games.
All right. So if we took out just 2 of them, so that means let's go through you. Let's see. So we've decided
2 of mine got eliminated,
and 1 of mine got eliminated. So it's okay to not.
3.
Yeah. So it's okay to not have. It's okay to have levels, I guess we're deciding. And not
yes. Right.
No, stages, I mean, that you
can't. Stages, yeah.
We're deciding that Fire Emblem is definitely an RPG?
I would say so.
Okay. I haven't played it, but I'm sure it is. All right. That means an RPG must have, we're going to say visible stat numbers. Why the hell would they be invisible?
Yeah.
It must include character growth outside of the skill, meaning the stats must level up. The way to level them up must be a grindable, that is, repeatable way to train your characters. The game must have characters.
Yes.
What game doesn't?
I think it's important. No, Tetris doesn't.
Yeah, I know.
Your own example.
Okay. It must have equipment. We said it's okay to not have equipment, even though it would be stupid not to. That was one of the ones we eliminated, right?
We struck that one out. Yeah.
Okay. So combat must be dictated, or can be dictated, primarily by your statistical influence, by your character parameters,
by your stats.
Stats. You know, in America we call them statistics, but in Japan they call them parameters, and I feel like parameter is the more correct word.
Yeah, it probably is the more apt word to use. Statistics, I don't know. Parameter, I think, is more accurate.
Okay, I'm going to keep calling it a parameter then. And the ability to progress should be dependent on your parameters, not on tools, which eliminates Symphony of the Night. Okay, so that means Symphony of the Night, no longer an RPG if it ever was. Zelda games, yeah, goodbye. Zelda games, out since the beginning, never included. What did we decide about Zone of the Enders? Oh, that's right. It's not. Nothing is really dictated by the statistical influence. So, boom.
It's an action game.
It's an action game. Yes. The problem is, no. We said Demon Souls is an action RPG because the combat can be dictated by primarily by
you can grind to the point where you are hitting hard enough to overcome not learning how to dodge roll fast enough or something.
Exactly. Okay. There we go. We've decided it. What do you think? Can we just tell everybody we are right and they're wrong from now on now?
We've come down from the mountain with the tablets.
Yes.
Okay, we got them in both arms.
Yep.
We have sat here pondering. No one has done this before, and now
No one's-
we have. Don't even look for it. We have the definitive criteria for what makes a role-playing game of any sort.
Definitive.
Defined.
All right. I think that takes care of this episode. Thank God. Freaking Monster Hunter World, sorry. That's not an RPG. So another good reason to dislike the Game Awards, I guess.
Did we really clarify that Monster Hunter World isn't an RPG, though? I think I just clarified that it probably shouldn't have won against Dragon Quest XI.
We definitely clarified that, but, well, didn't we find out that you can't grind character levels in that game?
I'm pretty sure. No, I think you're right. I think that's one of the instances where the game is dictated primarily by tools.
Yeah. It's like you grind for items and stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah. I've never actually played a Monster Hunter game. Always wanted to, though.
Monster Hunter World is alright. It's got a lot of problems. It's not better than Dragon Quest XI.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for today. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And if you haven't been watching our awesome freaking RPG podcast, Turn-Based Memories, I recommend it. Just recently, Mel finished playing Chrono Trigger for the first time, and we had an awesome talk about that. And, yeah, go listen to it. I won't tell you. I won't spoil it. He loved it.
Spoilers!
Yeah. And please tell all your RPG friends. And that'll do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.